Frederick's wounds are examined by the castle's physicians, and fortunately none of them pose a threat to his life. While receiving treatment, he has a chance encounter with Hippolyta and Matilda and ends up developing romantic feelings for Matilda. Despite Matilda's enduring love for Theodore, she is uncertain about his feelings towards her, given that he arrived at the castle with Isabella, who also appears to have feelings for him. Wanting to spend more time with Matilda, Frederick shares his backstory with them. He tells them about his experiences fighting in the Crusades and being taken captive by infidels. During his captivity, Frederick had a dream that his daughter was in peril and that he could find guidance by going to a forest near Joppa. Following his vision, he searched for the forest after being freed and ultimately discovered a dying hermit there who provided him with information. In his final moments, the hermit revealed to Frederick a secret passed down from Saint Nicholas, the location of a massive sword. After locating the sword with his men, Frederick discovered a prophecy inscribed on it that stated, "Alfonso's blood alone could rescue Isabella at Otranto." Frederick's longing for Matilda bears a resemblance to Manfred's desire for Isabella. Similar to Manfred's inability to recognize his own daughter Matilda, Frederick is initially unable to identify Isabella. This shared desire for each other's daughters implies a potential subconscious desire for their own offspring, suggesting an underlying theme of incestuous longing. Theodore's ambiguous affection towards Matilda serves as a precursor to her later uneasy encounter with Isabella. It is uncovered that Frederick's appearance in Otranto, which hinders Manfred's intentions, was divinely orchestrated by Saint Nicholas. The enormous sword houses the second prophecy in the novel, which reinforces Isabella's character as a vulnerable maiden in need of rescue. Upon arrival, Manfred is taken aback by the sight of Theodore in armor and mistakenly assumes him to be Alfonso. However, upon realizing that it is indeed Theodore, Manfred becomes enraged that he has managed to escape. Assuming that Jerome aided Theodore in his escape, Manfred demands an explanation for how Theodore managed to be separated from his father and then reunited with him. According to Theodore, he was abducted by pirates during his childhood along with his mother, who unfortunately passed away soon after. However, before her demise, she left a note indicating that Theodore was the offspring of the Count of Falconara. Until 2 years prior to the events in the story, he was enslaved by the pirates. It was only when a Christian ship liberated him that he regained his freedom. However, despite searching for his father in both his castle and Naples, he was unable to locate him. Consequently, he arrived in Otranto and started working as a farmhand in order to sustain himself. After Frederick speaks highly of Theodore's bravery, kindness, and integrity, they all retire to their respective rooms. As Theodore explains to Manfred how he ended up in Otranto, he validates his aristocratic status by referring to a written document that verifies his identity. Manfred will later disclose that documents concerning lineage are particularly vital in ascertaining who will rule. Furthermore, the fact that a Christian ship liberated Theodore further reinforces the novel's portrayal of Christian and non-Christian characters as embodiments of good and evil, respectively. The following day, Matilda and Isabella make plans to meet up because they share feelings for Theodore, who has caused a rift between them. Isabella, knowing that Theodore has feelings for Matilda, suggests that Matilda pursue her long-time desire to become a nun, whereas Matilda wants to ask Isabella if Theodore reciprocates her feelings. Following an uncomfortable period during which both women are hesitant to express their emotions, Isabella ultimately reveals that Theodore has feelings for Matilda. In an effort to preserve their friendship, both women attempt to relinquish their romantic interest in Theodore until their conversation is disrupted by the sudden appearance of Hippolyta. Theodore becomes a source of conflict in Matilda and Isabella's friendship as their love for him causes them to prioritize their jealousy over their unusual benevolent behavior. The narrator highlights that the characters can only return to their magnanimous and altruistic personalities when they let go of their desire for romantic love. Consequently, the narrator portrays romantic love as a disruptive, corruptive, and potentially taboo power, as seen in Manfred's and Frederick's situation. Hippolyta is of the opinion that Frederick will take over Otranto, and so she declares that she has suggested to Manfred that Frederick and Matilda should marry to bring together the rights of their respective families. The two princesses, particularly Isabella, are filled with shock and dismay. Isabella subtly refers to Manfred's wrongdoings and informs Hippolyta that Manfred has plans to end their marriage. Despite her conviction in Isabella's innocence, Hippolyta is deeply sorrowful and tries to defend her husband by proposing that Isabella may have misinterpreted the circumstances. However, she also implies a dreadful fate that she fears awaits them all. Afterward, she decides to consent to the divorce and dedicate herself to religious life as a nun in a convent situated nearby, with the belief that this act of self-sacrifice could redeem her past deeds. As Isabella starts to implore the heavenly angels to spare her from marrying Manfred, Hippolyta intervenes and reminds her that her father has the power to decide her fate. Even though Hippolyta is now aware of Manfred's misdeeds, she refuses to accept them. Despite Hippolyta becoming aware of her husband's wrongdoings, she chooses to prioritize her loyalty to him over her conscience and refuses to believe the allegations. Hippolyta's suggestion of resolving the situation through divorce and becoming a nun may seem like a personal sacrifice to her, but in reality it aligns with her husband's desires and would make it easier for him to pursue Isabella's hand in marriage. Hippolyta's act of stopping Isabella from praying to God and instead urging her to obey her father highlights how her priorities are misplaced. Just as she prioritized her husband's wishes over her conscience, she now prioritizes fatherly authority over divine authority. Hippolyta locates Jerome at the church and approaches him for advice on the ethical considerations surrounding a divorce. During that particular moment, Jerome is advising his son to repress his emotions towards Matilda, stating that the descendants of a tyrant must be eradicated for 3 to 4 generations. Theodore, not accustomed to obeying his father's commands, discovers that he is incapable of ceasing his affection for Matilda. Hippolyta requests that Jerome excuse his son, and once they are alone, seeks his viewpoint on the marriages of Matilda and Frederick and Isabella and Manfred, as well as her approval for a divorce. While Hippolyta approves of both suggestions, Jerome strongly objects to them, stating that a divorce resulting in a union between Manfred and Isabella would be contrary to divine intent. Derived from the Bible, Jerome's statement about the eradication of a tyrant's descendants serves as both an omen of Matilda's demise and characterizes it as being ordained by God. Thus, Theodore's affection for Matilda, in defiance of his father's admonition, becomes a conflict between his desire and his religious devotion. As Hippolyta talks to Jerome in the castle, Manfred suggests to Frederick that they exchange marriages between their daughters. Despite initially hesitating due to concerns about public perception and the allure of Matilda and ruling Otranto, Frederick eventually relents and accepts the proposal, but only if Hippolyta approves of the arrangement. Similar to Hippolyta and Theodore, Frederick also struggles to restrain his worldly longings for both Matilda and political power and is enticed by Manfred's suggestion. Manfred's proposal for a double marriage will lead to incestuous relationships not only because Isabella is effectively Manfred's daughter, but also because the resulting in-law relationships would be considered incestuous. Should Frederick and Manfred proceed with the exchange of marriages between their daughters, they would become their own daughters' sons-in-law. Right after that, Manfred promptly looks for Hippolyta, who is still engaged in a conversation with Jerome at the church. Having already done it multiple times, Manfred and Jerome argue once again over whether Jerome's religious authority overrides Manfred's political authority. Manfred asserts that he has a better understanding of the divorce procedures than Jerome and takes Hippolyta with him to talk privately. Before departing, Manfred covertly instructs one of his spies to stay behind in the church. Manfred still fails to acknowledge the supremacy of divine authority over earthly authority and therefore denies any authority that Jerome may hold as a priest. At the same time, Manfred views the church as a political organization rather than a religious one, which is evident from his decision to plant a spy within its walls.